Welcome to the Thriving Outside the Box podcast. Join me, Dr. Kimberly Grocher, a licensed psychotherapist, executive coach, and yoga and mindfulness meditation teacher, as I shed light on the stories of leaders and entrepreneurs across industries who not only dared to create their own path in their careers, businesses, and lives, but have found a way to do it while thriving mentally, physically, and spiritually. I hope you walk away with the inspiration to do the same. So welcome to another episode of Thriving Outside the Box podcast with Dr. Kimberly Grocher. I am your host, Dr. Kim, and I am very happy to welcome to the show today, Dr. Stephanie Bosco-Ruggiero. Stephanie and I were in the same doctoral program at Fordham University at the Graduate School of Social Services. So welcome, Stephanie. I'm very excited to have you here today and to talk more about your journey, because I know we have a lot of colleagues that are probably really interested in what you're doing right now. So I'll turn it over to you so you can introduce yourself and tell us where you are and what you really want to get across today in today's episode.
Okay. It's great to be on your new podcast, Kim. It was just terrific having Kimberly in the PhD program as a colleague. It's been a little time. We both made it out alive. Thank goodness. Done with that. But years ago, we had talked about our love of media and getting information out in different ways. So this is very exciting. We're both kind of going in that direction a little bit. So yes, as Kimberly said, I was in the social work program at Fordham University, the PhD program. So I have a PhD in social work. I have a master's in urban affairs and public policy, it's called. So I was never actually a clinical social worker. I went into the PhD with research in mind and policy. So that's a little different from most of my colleagues in the PhD program who were clinical, had MSWs. And I have a BA in political science from Vassar College up here in the Hudson Valley, where we both are. And I started my career in government service, local government, city, county, that kind of thing. It was pretty rough. I felt like I needed a change after like 8 years of doing politics and government. It's a great career. It can be frustrating. Anyway, when I got to the master's program at University of Delaware for research and policy, public policy. And then I got, after the government career was like, I needed to do something else. I worked for a nonprofit called Neighborhood Housing Services of New York City. I worked on the predatory lending, was really getting out of control at that time. When I did that, I got very interested in housing and housing policy. And then I found a position at Fordham University, Westchester, with a wonderful professor, expert in child welfare, Dr. Virginia Strand. And I worked on federally funded projects, 3 different ones, over 10 years with her, and really honed my research skills, started the PhD program. And I learned a lot from her about writing peer-reviewed journal articles, writing grant reports, doing research, qualitative and quantitative, and the whole world of research and, practice research specifically. The projects had to do with child trauma, child welfare workforce, and dissemination of a trauma curriculum for social work students at schools across the country in working with students who were taking those courses. So it was great. And then, doing the PhD program through the pandemic. And so it all kind of finished it up during the pandemic. And I don't know if you want to get into the next step after that.
So, of course, I have some questions, and then we can definitely get into the after, because I just resonated so much when you said we got out alive, because that's kind of
it's tough. It's tough.
That in and of itself is an achievement.
A PhD program is not for the timid or like...
It's a very different experience, too, when you are mid-career, you have already had some work experience, you maybe have to work full-time, you have a family, you have financial obligations. Like, that's a whole other nuance that people don't really talk about.
Yes.
Was Dr. Strand instrumental in making you or helping you decide to actually do the PhD in social work? Because like you said, you were coming from another discipline.
Yeah, I had gotten very interested in policy, urban policy, social policy in grad school and through my work at neighborhood housing services. So it was a good fit. She was doing child welfare workforce policy. So things that I was interested in. And it was a natural progression. And she was a mentor. Mm-hmm. She showed me, not by professing it or anything, but just by watching her every week do her thing. Just an amazing woman. And she just believed in me and gave me a lot of responsibility. And having someone like that is instrumental in deciding to go into a PhD program and just in your career. So I was very lucky.
No, it definitely helps to have that kind of mentorship and guidance. You know, modeling it for you as well as advising you. And you had that research background. So I remember you were very ahead in all those classes because the rest of us were kind of like, what?
Yeah,
you were like, got it.
Caught up now, though. Yeah, I had a preview because of Dr. Strand. And she did say something like, don't do it if basically you're not serious about it. Good professors will want you to reflect very deeply about this decision. You know, you really need to want to be a researcher to do a PhD program. Don't think that it's going to be easy, that kind of thing. So That was great advice.
No, it's true. It definitely is about the creating the knowledge, getting into the weeds and really understanding your area on a much, much deeper level than most courses or degree programs are going to expose you to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's use that to segue into what you decided to do after, right? Because in most PhD programs, they prepare you for research. And I feel like, you can tell me if you think it's different, there's also this kind of push to go into academia. Of course, you've got the research background. They want to funnel you into academia so you can be contributing to the field in that way. Mm-hmm. But that is kind of like this assumed next step.
Yeah, it's interesting. Dr. Strand had what's called a DSW, which has become more rare, much more rare, I would say, than a PhD social work program. And so that was more for people who wanted that PhD while they're doing practice, although she did go into the research. It was fine if you wanted to go into research, but I was kind of definitely going in the direction of research and policy, whereas some of my colleagues were going to continue private practice or clinical work with the PhD and not necessarily primarily do research. So, they kind of inculcate that academic route in you when you're going through the program. You feel it because you're expected to teach, of course, as an adjunct. And so I was a little concerned that I didn't have an MSW and how that would impact having a PhD in social work and what paths I could take. And I was told that the big social work programs hire people without MSWs because they're so huge, they can hire professors that focus on research and policy. Maybe not as accurate as it had been before because there's a lot going on in academia with financial constraints, and you want to hire people who can teach all kinds of things. Downsizing, maybe, of faculty. So, yeah, I knew I had to go the research, not the clinical route. I didn't know how that would work out. So it was a little bit of a risk for me versus doing something like sociology, right? like a PhD in sociology, where you don't have that clinical background. But I was interested in academia, and I did do the adjuncting like many of our colleagues and got a taste for teaching, liked it, did interview for a couple of full-time positions, but getting the sense, that it just wasn't a great fit, maybe because of the lack of the MSW or, and I don't know if you're hearing this from other people, but more than that, they all want you to come in with money. They want you to come in with research grants. And how do you get research grants if you're not even a professor yet? So that is kind of like, okay, how do you even get started if everyone wants you to bring grant money to their institution, but you don't have it necessarily if you aren't a full-time professor or you're just adjuncting? Right. So it was interesting. And I finished the PhD program, 2021 during the pandemic. Right. Yeah. So writing the dissertation while other students were taking the courses online, we were in the dissertation writing phase. So it didn't impact us having to take online, not having those in-person classes. So many social issues to look at, but universities not necessarily hiring aggressively. So I kept adjuncting and applying to the positions, not too many, enjoying being a part-time instructor, but then you start to feel like, is the money that I'm making, is that respectful, right, of my education? And then teaching all the intro classes, and you're not necessarily teaching advanced stuff. So it was like an interesting journey. And so I think that's how I got started. So I'm looking for a job while being a mom, and my son was dealing with a lot with the pandemic and the hybrid schooling, online and in person, basically stopped going to school. So, sometimes as parents and caregivers of aging parents or caregivers of whoever, the full-time job is kind of daunting. And the pandemic just made it kind of worse and easier, Kimberly. Like, there were a lot of jobs that were hybrid and some that were even fully remote, right? So I think a lot of parents were getting maybe some more opportunities because the parents could work from home. It was possible. And we know women in particular, moms, right? They might have had more opportunities because of the work from home. But then there's the balancing act. So the fairy tale becomes like a nightmare because you're working full time from home with your kid, like, bunny ears behind you during meetings and like whatever they're doing. And you really can't focus. So for me, just full time in general was hard. And so that's how I got into the freelancing and consulting journey. So it was like pandemic, parenting, my interests, and my independent spirit of liking to create something. You use the word create. And when you're an independent researcher or consultant, you're creating something of your own. I love that.
Yes. Okay. So break down what you mean by freelance and consulting, right? Because those are like really broad terms. So what does freelance and consulting look like for you?
So I was doing the adjunct teaching, and I started to tutor on a platform called Wisant. And that was my first step into the freelancing world. I would say tutoring is like a freelance service, right? So freelancing is more of a task or a job that you're getting done for someone or organization because of needs that they have to fill a gap that they can't in their organization. You're not necessarily advising them or consulting. The consulting part is you have this knowledge and you are lending your knowledge to someone for a fee, of course, and advising them about how to do a research study or project, or a PhD student, advising them on their journey. So consulting connotes like you're sharing your knowledge and advising. freelancing is doing a writing task or editing or providing a service. So I started with tutoring, which was kind of safe but interesting, and working with PhD students because I was in the thick of my own dissertation and the empathy
right.
for people who needed help.
And so you were tutoring PhD students?
Yeah, and masters and a few college. But I'm going to say that's a good first step for academics who want to go the independent route. It's kind of a safe thing, but then you're going to want to branch out because you don't want to be a tutor of PhD students forever, obviously.
Okay, so how did you find, especially like the consulting, how did you find your first opportunity?
Yeah, so Upwork was becoming big at that time. During the pandemic. So everyone who wasn't exposed before to online learning, right, in higher education and also remote work, all that stuff came to the forefront during the pandemic. So work started to get really big. So I got into it at a great time, and they were growing and evolving. And Upwork is a platform where you put your bio up there, your profile, you can put portfolio, projects up there to show. It's gotten more sophisticated, but when I started, I would take like $50 projects, $100, $200. I want to use my knowledge and get some clients. And this is like really exciting, right? This is, I could do this, really do this. I'm really enjoying this, that kind of feeling, while I'm also looking at some full-time opportunities. I think Upwork is a great place for people to start still. And it just grew and grew. You start small with like small dollar projects and you get those reviews and you just grow on the platform. And then I also got a couple of word of mouth clients, but in the beginning, you're going to be very platform heavy. So I want to hear more about the formation of your consulting firm and what you're doing with that now. I also know you wanted to share some concrete tips and tools and resources with people. And then, of course, I definitely want to talk about how you managed to be well in the midst of all of this, because you mentioned a few things. You mentioned the pandemic, you mentioned your son and just the whole schooling thing during the pandemic and all of that. So there's so many different moving parts, right? So how do you take care of yourself? How do you stay on top of your own wellness while you're navigating so many moving pieces? Yeah, let me answer the second question first.
Okay.
Well, it's fresh in my mind because you've reminded me of all the moving pieces and how crazy it was. And you're worrying like, oh, I am supposed to be a professor. I'm supposed to get a full-time job now. I'm supposed to be this. I'm supposed to be that. Because you're kind of prepared for that. In a school as good as Fordham too, they're telling you about interviewing. They're telling you about this and that, how to become a full professor. And you kind of have this pressure on yourself. But pandemic and having a child with school refusal, that brings you down to earth real fast. So school refusal kind of infers a behavioral problem. I'm not sure that fits all kids because we learned from that experience during the pandemic that there was something deeper going on. And it turned out he was neurodiverse. So it was like very stressful during the pandemic. So I couldn't necessarily, and the aftermath of that, trying to figure out his diagnosis and what is going on. Why year after year is he not able to get back to in-person school while all the other kids are? So my perspective started to change about, to a certain extent, I know what's important, having that social work background, right? And being a parent, but then really being in a crisis. Learning from my child and that situation, I could actually get into this too. I could help people in this area. With the freelancing and consulting, when you have so much going on, can be a great release and outlet for your creative energy, and that's wellness. That's wellness, and not worrying, I'm supposed to be this and that. That's prestigious, or, a postdoc thing. And it just kind of was all like whatever in that pandemic, right? The post-pandemic period, we were all kind of like, we are a new spirit. We are like, we are all reborn into this like bizarre world. So there was a lot of creativity that I fear like maybe we'll lose a little from that. We don't want another pandemic to bring us into that, but that sort of creativity and daring of that time. But I did more and more consulting and freelancing. And I said, I probably should call myself something. I called it Oasis Consulting. You have to, you have to think about LLC and DBA and all that stuff. And I
DBA haven't doing business as.
Doing business as, if you want to call it something. But, putting it all together in a website feels good. And I worked with a friend/colleague on some projects. I created a staff page. I put her on there. I hired some research assistants, very part-time. One from my alma mater, Vassar College, which was, a couple from there, which was nice to be able to give people from your college, students some experience with research. And so it's just everything grows from there. I want to say I am married. My husband has a full-time job. So when you're listening to me and you're saying, oh, this is exciting, this is a good idea, I want to tell you it's more risky, obviously, as Kimberly's former speakers have talked about, not having the healthcare, right, through marriage and having the spouse with the full-time job, because as I was building it, I didn't have that immediate pressure of 40 hours a week. There was pressure to make a certain amount, but let's admit it, if you're single, it's harder. One of your other guests said that she was doing her day job, and I think starting at night with the freelancing and consulting, building it up until she could get out of that, that day job. If you have to have your own health insurance, maybe purchase it as a freelancer consultant ultimately. And you have to have a certain income for your mortgage and you're single, right? You have to do this very gradually. So I had the benefit of being able to have those cushions to a certain extent, although I did need a certain amount of income, right? And being a consultant and freelancer, the work comes in waves for some reason. Anyone will tell you that. And then when it slows down, you're like, okay, I should take a week off and enjoy myself. But the only thing on your mind is like, no, I have to apply to like 20 gigs here because I'm worried. Right?
Yep. There's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of, like you said, creativity, which in and of itself can be like an outlet in wellness. But there's also this stress because things aren't consistent.
They're not necessarily consistent. And it depends on what you're doing, the consistency. You might want to be on several platforms at once to increase the flow of work and make sure you always have the number of hours you want weekly. So I'll just mention Upwork is a great place to start. Fiverr is a good place to start too. Very small dollar amounts, small projects, baby steps, right? And then maybe Upwork. And then I found a new research-specific platform called Collabtree, Kolabtree, very international. Not getting a whole lot from that, though, yet. They're growing and changing, but it's worth looking into. There's Contra, there's LinkedIn, TopTal, I think that's more STEM.
These are all like such great resources because first of all, I haven't heard of half of them. And then like Fiverr and Upwork, I have used for like graphic design services, logos, things like that. But I wouldn't think that like as a researcher, I could go on there and offer my services. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So Upwork has a category called writing and research services or something, or maybe they're two different categories. You should watch some YouTube videos. You should talk to someone who's done it. There's some tricks. There's, you have to do the right categories for a researcher, writer, academic, certain search terms. You get a feed of things that would match.
I know before we started recording, you were talking about YouTube. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing with YouTube right now and how this fits into everything.
Yeah. So my journey has been about building slowly. Started from tutoring, Upwork, consulting, freelancing, right? And building sort of a brand. You start to get to build your social media profile, your professional persona, right? And I said, I have these videos of presentations I've done about adopting older children. Over 10 years ago, with two colleagues, I had written a book about adopting older children. And I'm like, I've got to dump these videos onto YouTube because I want to share this knowledge. And then I started to do some new videos, right? And then maybe I'll start talking about mental health and just wanting to get in on the YouTube thing. Let's put it this way. We need more diverse voices and topics on YouTube. You can find anything, I guess, but wanting to sort of develop that personality, I call it Professor Lady, wanting to develop this like persona of like very friendly, down to earth. Academics can speak to the masses kind of thing. And like, we're not all in the ivory tower and speaking into like this crazy academic lingo. And I just wanting to like, what have I done? What have I done in the past 20 years that I can share with people? Just wanting to do that and having fun with it too. I have to say I've gotten into some different topics. This is like my fun niche side research area, like getting into consciousness, spiritually transformative experiences, also like paranormal kind of topics, UAP, which is unidentified aerial phenomena. We had the drone craziness. There's all these podcasters talking about the drones and these sightings. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have fun with this. Because I'm seeing stuff too. And I'm talking to my neighbors and they're seeing all these bizarre things. And I'm like, I don't have to talk about social policy all the time and mental health. I'm going to like have a little fun too. So you could create like little podcasts on separate podcasts within one channel, just having fun. You take baby steps and you build it. Think about how to monetize it at some point too, if you want to do that. So the long-term vision of like, I'm going to keep building this. I'll do more and more. Maybe if I can make a little income doing it, I can do even more. So people who are interested in YouTube, you can look at, the YouTube monetization, you have to have 3,000 viewing hours. Yeah, that's going to take like years. So you can look at Patreon, things like that, affiliate marketing, where I just did like a book review and I put a link. And if someone clicks the link, you get a little commission. Get creative and do all that stuff. And we need more women podcasters and YouTubers. It's kind of, is it the manosphere? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
YouTube. Yeah. But we need relatable academic research people too to talk about like research and make it understandable for people.
So first of all, I just want to point out that when we first talked about you coming on the podcast, we talked about, you wanted to talk about your consulting and things like that and not doing the traditional academic job path, right? But you are outside of the box in so many ways, Stephanie, right? Like from not having an MSW and then coming into a doctoral program specific for social work, right? To really deciding that this academic path wasn't for you, but then also writing a book about adopting older children because you have adopted an older child. Like, he
was 10 days old. Ours was 10 days old when we adopted. And the book was written before the PhD program. So it's a little dated, but it's still got a lot of great info if you want to look at that. But we talked to someone adopting older children. It's a practical guide. It's called a practical guide. And what inspired it was we wanted to adopt an infant. Our baby is now 15, this big, like 5'8" baby, right? 5'8". He was 10 days old when he came to us, but I made a mistake sort of speaking to an adoption agency that focused on older children when we were interested in adopting an infant. And I was so inspired by his stories. He had adopted older kids. and the need for people to adopt from foster care. So that's where it came about.
And so were your co-authors people who had adopted older children?
Victor Groza is an expert in adoption. He's a national, probably international expert from Case Western. He doesn't have kids. And my colleague friend, Gloria Russo-Wasal, is a licensed mental health counselor who had vast child mental health experience, but not an adopted parent herself. So you take inspiration from your life, and you also, I want to tell people to keep building on this notion of building the skills too. As a freelancer and consultant, you keep challenging yourself and learning new skills, and go back to working with PhD students actually when you're in research, because sometimes you don't want to do that like a whole lot when you're very experienced. But you learn from students and you start having to sharpen your skills that you had, and you learn some new skills too. And do the challenging jobs. Maybe charge a little less because you're not experienced in that research method, but you're learning from that project. So even though you're not so experienced, you give them sort of a discount, but you're learning. And then the next project, you have that skill.
Okay. All right. So continuing to build, laying the groundwork, laying a foundation for yourself to build on, and then leaning into these other areas because they simply interest you, even if they're not, monetary right now, like with the YouTube channel and the different things that you're doing.
Right. You find a little bit of time for that stuff, build it slowly, think about how can I get the synergy, right? How can I put this all together and it gets me more clients maybe, or it exposes me to this area or these people. It all has to be synergy, building.
So I know we're getting close to our time together. So are there any last minute tips, tools, or ideas that you want to leave the audience or the listeners with?
I think consulting and freelancing, especially for women who are, and people who are hitting a wall of some kind in their organizations, is a very freeing, wonderful option. You can't jump into it immediately. You have to do it slowly, especially if you don't have that fallback of health insurance. But try it. It can be an amazing journey. You will do things that you didn't necessarily know you could do. You will try things that you're not maybe so comfortable with to make that money, but you're creating. And I just think it's wonderful. It's a wonderful option. And don't they always say there's so many like women business owners and consultants and freelancers? It's been an incredible outlet for so many professional women, I would say, who are parents too, who can't do the 9 to 5 or the 40, 50, 80-hour week, right? whatever.
That's more like it. Yes.
Whatever they're doing. And they're just like, screw this. Like, I'm not going to be part of this rat race kind of thing, at a certain point in your life. And, but I have all this knowledge and I want to use it somehow. So do it. Try it slowly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Where can people find you on YouTube again, online, on these different platforms? How can they follow you?
YouTube, it's called Professor Lady 11. And I'm on LinkedIn and the website and on Upwork, of course, and Oasis Consulting. If you put in my name, Stephanie Bosco-Ruggiero, Oasis Consulting, it'll come up. I have a Facebook page on adopting older children, and I have a violence prevention research group on LinkedIn. So probably if you search my name, these things will come up, or you can email me at ccc, so that's 3-letter C's, .Stephanie with a PH @gmail.com.
Awesome. And I'm going to put all this in the show notes too, so people will be able to read it or listen to you explain it. So be able to access
wow,
it
you are doing an amazing job getting all this out of the box stuff out of the box.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And thank you all for tuning in. And I'll be back next time. All right. Bye.